Hello, my dear church boys, and welcome to St. Robert's Daygame Pickup Podcast, episode number 36. And in this podcast, we'll talk about guys not having enough time for learning daygame. Maybe it's work, maybe it's gym, maybe it's something else. Guys want to learn daygame to meet girls they like anywhere: streets, malls, coffee shops, etc. But actually, many guys see daygame as the first step to completely changing their life, taking their life to the next level, really starting to do what they want to do in their life, being kind of the boss of their own life. But they have to put in time. They have to go out and learn their game. They have to go out at least 3 times a week, because the worst thing you can do while learning day game is skipping more than one day. When you skip more than one day of day game, you will see that your skill, the things you've learned, they drop very, very fast. Maybe you can skip one day, that's fine. If you skip 2 days, the approach anxiety is oftentimes back, and many things you were kind of getting better at are lost, and you need a few days to get back where you were just a few days ago. So the best thing to do is to go out at least every other day, at least while you are learning. Maybe once you're really good, you can skip more, but you have to have many day game days before you get to that point. Work, gym, and other things you've got going in your life can get in the way of day game. Many people simply don't have enough time to learn day game. I have worked with many students from all over the world and from very different walks of life. I've worked with students, IT guys, executives, doctors, startup guys, very, very different people. A lot of people who work simple 9 to 5 jobs. Many people are very, very busy. So I've had the conversation on how to find that time for day game with many of my students. I've had this talk many times, and two most common things that keep guys from learning day game are work. They have to go to work, and maybe they are working on this new thing in business. Maybe it's a side hustle, and they would rather spend time on improving their business, on making something new, than on learning day game. And the second thing is gym. I have to go to the gym several times a week. I don't have time to do day game after work because I'm working out. This is really the focus of my life, is what I hear a lot. We will talk in this podcast about both of these things, work and gym. But before we get into it, just some information. I'm still in Latvia because traveling isn't that easy right now because of the 14-day mandatory quarantine for anyone traveling. But I'm starting to plan my trips. I have some students ready to jump in field as soon as the 14-day mandatory quarantine for travelers will be over. And as I said in the last podcast, I'll take a few students after all of this is over for the old price. As you know, infield coaching prices went up earlier this year, but I'll take a few students for the old price with the rule that we won't have the date set until the COVID thing kind of calms down. You will have a reserved coaching spot, and we will simply do the coaching within 1.5 months after the 14-day mandatory quarantine is lifted. We will look at where in Europe we could do this, but I have a few pretty good destinations in mind which are amazing for day game because of the girls, where I think restrictions should be lifted pretty soon, and they're just really beautiful, really amazing cities. Some of them I've been to, and some others I really want to check out because I think they're hidden gems in Europe. So if you want to know more prices, cities, etc., send me an email to robert@strobert.blog, and take into consideration that this offer is only valid to people from Europe, as the COVID situation is very different in other places in the world. Also, podcasts only cover some things I'm working on, some things I'm doing. If you want to get more tips, ideas, layer reports, or insider information, like for example, access to the free online course platform we just launched. Just sign up for my mailing list at strobert.blog. That is strobert.blog, and you'll get a link to join the group chat where we have over 160 day gamers from all over the world. But now let's get down to business. If you work a serious job or you are running a business or you're building a business, it's very likely you are a busy guy. Maybe you work later than 5 p.m. Maybe you're someone who works 12 hours a day. Maybe you are right now working a 9 to 5 job, but you are working on a side project, or you just work a job that makes you really tired after work, and you just feel like when you go out, you don't have the energy to do the sets, you're not in the right mindset. Or you work in a suit and it feels weird to day game in a suit. We will talk about all of these scenarios. But before we do, let's talk a bit about one thing. Let's talk about logical arguments. Imagine you are on a date and the chick says, "Oh, but we won't have sex tonight. Like, I see you just as a friend," or any other frame test or shit test that you have heard on a date. And if you try to logically argue with her, there is no way she will change her mind. You don't have to change her mind. If she has made up her mind, what you have to do is you have to change her emotional state. And we are dealing with a very similar situation right now. If you are in a state where you've decided, oh, I don't have the time for day game, and it's just a reason for you to talk yourself out of day gaming, it's just a way to avoid facing approach anxiety, avoid the fear of failure, because day game is a lot about fearing to fail. You go in, you get rejected, and it feels bad because you got rejected. It feels really, really bad. Or a lot of guys, some guys, what they do is they would get the numbers, but I know a guy who didn't text the numbers. Actually, it was, yeah, I don't think we have discussed this publicly. It was Mr. T. He used to get numbers, but he wouldn't text them, because then you know how you run this amazing set, but you texted and she doesn't respond, so you kind of feel the rejection, you feel that the set failed. And a lot of guys have things like that. So in this podcast, I will give you tools and ideas what to do if you are too busy, if you don't have time to day game. But I cannot change your mind. If you've decided that this is the way you will deal with your fear, there is nothing I can tell you that will get you outside. Whatever circumstances you are in, if you are in a circumstances that don't allow you to day game because you work many hours, you go to gym, you have 17 other priorities, as a foundation for this podcast, you have to understand that you are the one who put yourself in those circumstances, and it is your choice to stay in those circumstances. Yes, I will give you tools, I'll give you information, I will give you things you can do, but it's up to you to go out and do those things. And maybe you really are in a circumstances where you don't have time and it will be really hard for you to do anything, but you are the one who has to change those circumstances. But more about that later in this podcast. And let's go over the 4 topics that I said we are going to talk about about work. And let's start with what to do if you work later than 5 p.m. Let's say your work ends at 6. Well, 6 is kind of fine, maybe like 7 or 8 p.m. Well, all I have to say is I learned day game in Riga. Riga is a very small city with less than 1 million people. And even in this city, you can day game pretty late during the summer. So if you live in a city that has 1 million or more people, which is, if you live in a smaller city than Riga, then well, it will be really hard to learn day game. Just you will have to maybe move to a different city, but that's a whole different topic. So day game in the evenings, that's one thing you can do if you day game, if you finish work late. I know I've had wings and students who usually end work at 7, 8 or even later, and what they would do if it's a good day, they would go out and they would still day game in the evenings. They would go on Insta dates like 9 p.m. and get same day lays, crazy stories. Another way you can look at this is, or another option, if you work till later than 5 p.m., maybe you start work later. Maybe a lot of people start work at 8 or 9. If you start your work at 10 or 11 or maybe noon for whatever reason, then day game in the mornings. Open chicks on their way to school or to work. I am oftentimes very surprised by the traffic and the quality of the traffic in the early mornings. All those chicks that you are opening from 5 to 7 when they leave work, well, guess what? They are going to the work in the morning. So traffic is really good in the morning. If you have chance to day game in the morning, do that. Go out earlier. Another option is day game during your lunch break. If you have 1 hour long break, well, congrats. Spend less time on eating and spend more time on doing sets. You can definitely do a few sets during your lunch break. Okay, this all sounds pretty simple, but what to do if you're really in a tough spot where you start work early, you have a short lunch break, and you work till late? Well, dude, you're the one who put yourself into that situation. That's your choice. Can you still do something? Yes, you can. You can do some sets on your way to work. Like, let's say, it's just like this is just on the paper. In reality, it will be a little bit different, but do a few sets on your way to work, like just leave 30 minutes earlier, do at least 3 sets in the morning. Do a few sets during your short lunch break. On the way to the place where you have lunch, just do a few sets. Do a few sets on your way home. But honestly, I've almost never met anyone who starts work really early, has a short lunch break, works till late. But if you're in that spot, there is still something you can do. You can still choose to do some sets in the morning during the lunch break and after you're done with your work. If you are listening to this podcast, it means you are probably a busy guy and you are working a lot, and it's hard for you to imagine how you could spend less time working and find enough time for day game. And let me put it this way. If something really bad happened, let's say you go to a doctor and your doctor says, well, you have a really, really bad health condition, and if you worked more than 6 hours a day, you would instantly drop dead. Could you find ways to work less in a way that negatively affects your income as little as possible? Maybe if you work 12 hours a day, then hearing words like, if you work more than 6 hours a day, could you do it? Well, you can always do it, but the question is, are you willing to do it? And if you were put in a situation where you just had to do it, or you would die if you didn't, I assume you would find ways to do it. And I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss. I've learned a lot from his books and from his podcasts. So I really suggest you go ahead and you read 4 Hour Work Week. Most likely you won't have a 4 hour work week. You will definitely work more, but you should be able to cut several hours off your work each day using the advice Tim Ferriss gives on his book. His book is really, really good. I highly, highly suggest it to anyone who feels that they are working too much and would like to work less. Or another option, if you feel that the advice there is too generic and maybe you are in a unique situation and you need to talk this through, well, get on a Skype call with me, get a Skype coaching call with me. After all, that's my other business, helping people figure out how to get shit done. I've worked with many freelancers, teams, and well-known startups who have made their way to the top in their field, not in the Latvia, but in the world. You working more than 8 hours a day is obviously your choice, and I know guys who have moved to other cities to be able to get good at day game. We have guys in the group chat that moved Mr. T, if I'm not wrong, moved from San Francisco to New York City because of day game to be able to get better at day game. I've had a student who moved from Boston to New York City to Manhattan to get better at day game, and I know several other guys who have changed cities they live in to learn day game. Plenty of people with serious jobs and businesses have learned day game. You just have to make a choice and find ways to do it. I gave you several options you can do it, but if they aren't enough in your case, and if you are in a very specific situation, as I told, hop on a call with me. But then again, I think the tips I gave you in the 4 Hour Workweek book should work for almost everyone. Let's look at the next scenario. Let's say you are working on a side project. You're working from 9 to 5, but then you go home and you're working on your new business. Well, that's really, really good, but you will have to learn to get shit done fast. I don't remember the name of the rule, but the idea is the work will take up as much time as you allocate to doing it. Let's say you have a task, you have to write some text. If you don't limit how much time you're willing to spend on it, you'll spend a lot of time on it. Next time, if you know you usually spend 2 hours on doing the task, do an experiment. Set a timer and say, I will do this task in 30 minutes. And you might be surprised how much you can get done if you limit the time you give yourself to do it. And again, just as I said before, I'm a big fan of 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. So read the book and it will help you a lot with your side projects. It will give you many, many tips how you can understand what things you should do and what you shouldn't do right now, how to do those things faster, and maybe you can get someone else do them for you. And use the solutions I suggested earlier as well. If you're working from 9 to 5 and then going home to work on your side hustle, that's amazing. But one big thing I can suggest is schedule your day game. Choose which days and at which times you will go out and how many sets you'll do or how much time you will dedicate to day game. Let's say you will go on every lunch break for an hour and do 5 sets, and then you'll do 5 sets after work, or you'll just work until 5, then day game until 7 on, let's say, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then do a lot of sets over the weekend. And the rest of the time you can spend on your side hustle. But scheduling your day game sessions is really important. So just open your calendar and find out a schedule that fits well within your life. Some of the best day gamers I know are the busiest people I know. Entrepreneurs, startup guys, sales guys trying to make a living by hustling many hours each day, or high-level corporate guys with big responsibilities in their work. This actually goes kind of against the stereotypes about good seducers, good day gamers, that they are those crazy bad boy degenerate types. That's not always true. A lot of really smart guys are getting into day game. I'd say around half of the guys I work with as a coach are really smart business people, really successful in other parts of life. So it's your choice to stop working when the workday is over. You choose how many hours you will dedicate to what things in your life. Side hustles are good, but if you can't be effective at them, they will take a lot of time. Learn to be effective. And the first step is to schedule how much time you will devote to side hustle and how much to day game. And next, let's talk about what to do if you are really tired after work. Actually, that's normal. A lot of guys are really tired at work. Your first sets will be awkward. And if you're tired after work, you might not be in a mood to day game. You might be too tired. You might just not give a fuck. You might kind of have apathy for day game. And what do you do? Well, once you do a few sets, you'll be in a much better mindset and have much higher energy. So you just go out of your office and in 2 minutes you do your first set. You can spend time to try to find ways to have more energy and do some voodoo shit like, oh, well, meditate after work to rest and then I go and do day game. Well, or you can simply go out and do your fucking sets. If you are tired after work, go and do your sets. They will put you in a much better state. They will give you the energy you need very, very fast. So it's that simple. There is no need to complicate anything if you're tired after work. And the last common excuse not to day game after work is there are guys who work in suits and it feels weird to day game in a suit, and I agree. I would feel kind of awkward to day game in a suit, but if I worked in a suit, I'd probably still do it. Well, if you live next to the day game area or next to your work, then it's pretty simple. You go home, you change, and then you go do day game. Or maybe you can change in your office. Maybe that is possible. If not, well, all I can say is day game in a suit. Just, okay, lose the tie. Don't be the serious lawyer type, but lose the tie and go day game in a suit. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if that's who you are, if that's what you do for a living and have you spend most of your time. Sure, on work days, go day game in a suit and do more day game on the weekends. Remember, you shouldn't skip more than one day of day game. So you will still have to day game on the work days. And think about a schedule like maybe on Tuesday and Thursday after work you go day game in your suit, you do 2 hours, you do 10 sets, great. And then on Saturday and Sunday you go put on your everyday clothes, you take your bad boy style or whatever it is you're wearing during the day, and you go do some sets over the weekend. And that's it. You will keep improving because you will do your sets in the suit on Tuesday and Thursday, and the big part of your work will be over the weekend. So you can definitely day game even if you work in a suit and you don't have an option to change before you go out doing day game. And I think it's just a mental block that some guys have that you can't day game in a suit, you have to be this bad boy. Well, if that's the situation you're in, I don't see why that would be a problem to day game. That's just how your life is. Accept it and go do your sets and show girls your wild side or whatever it is that your vibe is outside of work over the weekends or on dates. That's all I wanted to say about work, about what to do if work takes up too much of your time. And as I mentioned before, Tim Ferriss' 4 Hour Workweek, an amazing book, and I really think you should read it if you want to learn to work more effective, get shit done in a shorter time so you have more time for other activities in your life. And now let's talk about gym. Gym is the second most common thing I hear from guys, and they say, "Oh, gym takes up a lot of time. It's important for me. I wanna look really good, and I don't have time for day game." And especially if you drink on dates, that might not really go hand in hand with your gym beliefs, but that's up to you. A lot of guys that I know that are good at day game are actually hardcore gym guys, and I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Well, both of those things are kind of challenging to fit in your schedule if you want to be a hardcore day gamer. Gym is a little bit easier to fit around day game because it doesn't have scheduled classes. So you can go to the gym in the morning if you know it keeps you from day game. Yeah, just go to the gym in the morning, and you also most likely aren't hitting gym every day. And even if you are going to the gym every day, well, do some sets before you go to the gym or after you go to the gym. Brazilian Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and other scheduled classes are a bit harder because Well, they are happening at fixed times, and you probably are going to your classes at least 3 times a week. But again, exactly, you probably aren't training every day, and day game on your off days. Also, a thing you can do regardless of whether it's just gym or scheduled classes, leave to the gym an hour early and do 5 sets on the way. And also, obviously, do more sets over your days off and on the weekends. The most important question when talking about gym is very simple. If you are a gymaholic and you want to learn day game not only to be good with girls, but actually to use it as a first step to change your life, to start a business you like, to travel the world, to live this amazing lifestyle that more and more guys are trying to achieve, ask yourself one question. What is the one thing you could focus on right now that will change your life the most? Is it going to the gym as much as you're doing it, or is it to learn day game? Most likely it's day game. So set your priorities. Open your calendar and first schedule when you will go out, day game, do your sets, go on dates, and then make gym fit your day game schedule. It's about priorities, it's about what you put first. Is it lifting or is it learning to meet girls you like anywhere, literally anywhere you go, and maybe get inspiration, get validation that you can actually achieve stuff, see that you are able to do amazing things, start a business, travel the world. What's more important to you? That's the most important question you can ask if you're a gymaholic. Just as with when we spoke about work and business, some of the best day gamers I know are some of the most hardcore gym people I know. And if they can schedule it, then so can you. So that means you can also find ways to schedule gym around day game and find time for everything that's important in your life. So I gave you tips to fit work, gym, day game, all of those things in your schedule. And that is all there is needed for most guys, for way over 90% of the guys. That's all you need. But of course, maybe you are in a very specific situation and you need a different approach. Well, if you can't figure it out on your own, just send me an email to robert@saintrobert.blog and just get a Skype call with me, and we'll see how I can help you if that's what you really, really need. But most of the stuff I told you on this podcast should already solve most of your scheduling problems. Well, that's it, guys. We looked at what to do if you're too busy to find time for day game because of work or business, because you work till later than 5 p.m. Maybe you're working on a side project, are too tired after work, or you wear a suit and it feels weird to day game in a suit, or maybe you are going to a gym and that's really important part of your life. I hope this was helpful, and if you know anyone who would benefit from listening to this podcast, well, just let them know. And if you have any more topics you'd like me to cover on this podcast, ask me your questions in the Daygame Church Telegram group chat that is available on my website, saintrobert.blog, that is strobert.blog, or send me an email to robert@saintrobert.blog. And as said earlier, if you'd like to know more about learning day game as soon as the apocalypse is over and getting some infield coaching, send me an email about that as well. That's it, guys. Go out and do some sets, because what I'll do now is, this is one of the warmer days in Riga, so I will upload this podcast. I'll go outside and I will finally do some sets.